High above the mountains, beyond the clouds where lightning sleeps, there is a story older than memory. It is not just about a god on a marble throne, nor a ruler crowned with storms. It is about the endless sky itself, vast, unbroken, eternal, and in that sky lives a name whispered through thousands of years, Zeus. But this is not the Zeus of battles or punishments. This is the eternal Zeus, symbol of wonder, of order, of the great mystery watching over us. To the ancient Greeks, he was the father of gods and men. To us, he may be something more, a reminder that we are small beneath the heavens, yet deeply connected to their infinite reach. Tonight, as thunder rolls like a heartbeat, we begin a journey, not to temples or myths carved in stone, but to the living spirit of Zeus, a force still stirring in the sky and within us all. Welcome to the Eternal Zeus. Listen closely. Do you hear it? A low rumble, distant yet powerful, rolling across the sky. It's not just thunder. It's the sound of awakening, the spark of Zeus. When ancient people looked upward and saw lightning split the heavens, they felt both awe and fear. To them, it wasn't just a storm. It was a message, a sign that the sky itself was alive, filled with mystery and meaning. Zeus, in their minds, was not simply a god throwing bolts of fire. He was the very energy of the storm, the spark that ignited imagination. The pulse that reminded them the universe was greater than their own small lives. And so, thunder became more than noise. It became language, a conversation between heaven and earth. Imagine yourself thousands of years ago. You are standing on a hill, the night sky above you heavy with dark clouds. The air is thick, restless. A flash of light suddenly tears through the darkness. A heartbeat later, thunder follows, deep, rolling, endless. You don't call it electricity. You don't call it weather. You call it Zeus. The spark of thunder was the spark of myth. It told people that life was not random, that the forces of nature had voices, tempers, and even wisdom. And from that belief, stories blossomed like stars. But let's go deeper. Why thunder? Why lightning? Why did humans connect the voice of the storm with the presence of a god? Perhaps it was the suddenness. Lightning arrives without warning, bright and fierce, impossible to ignore. It is the symbol of sudden insight, the moment an idea strikes. Just as lightning cracks open the night sky, inspiration cracks open the human mind. It is no coincidence that we still say, asterisk, a flash of inspiration, asterisk. Zeus became more than a god of storms. He became the god of illumination, the one who reminded mortals that knowledge could arrive in a single, powerful instant. Think about your own life. Have you ever had a moment when clarity struck you, like lightning, when you suddenly understood something, without needing explanation? That moment, too, is Zeus. That is the spark of thunder living inside you. The ancients did not separate the outer world from the inner one. What they saw in the sky, they also felt in their hearts. When thunder shook the earth beneath their feet, it also shook their souls. Zeus was not just above them, he was within them. A reminder that human beings are also storms of energy, full of flashes and rumbles, filled with mystery and power. And so the spark of thunder was both external and internal. It taught people to respect the natural world, but it also taught them to respect themselves, to look at the lightning in the sky and say, asterisk, that too is in me. Asterisk. Over time, the thunderbolt became Zeus's symbol, not as a weapon, but as a sign of awakening, a sign of energy, a sign that life is never silent, never still, never empty. Listen again, even now. When you hear thunder, what do you feel? Do you shrink away from it? Or do you sense the greatness behind it, the pulse of something larger than yourself? That is what the ancients felt, and that is why Zeus, the eternal Zeus, could never fade away. Because as long as there is sky, there will be storms. And as long as there are storms, there will be thunder. And as long as thunder rolls, there will be that spark. The spark of awakening. the spark of Zeus. So remember this. The next time lightning strikes and thunder follows, pause. Don't just think of it as noise. Think of it as a story, a voice speaking across the ages, a voice that connects you to countless generations before you, a voice that whispers, even now. Asterisk. You are part of something eternal. Asterisk. This is the spark of thunder, the beginning of Zeus's eternal journey. Not the sound of destruction, but the sound of illumination. Not the end of silence, but the birth of story. The spark of Zeus lives in the storm. The spark of Zeus lives in you. Look up. Look higher than the tallest mountain. Higher than the birds. Higher than the drifting clouds. What do you see? You see the endless sky, a canvas without edges, a dome that stretches farther than the human eye can follow. A space so vast it humbles the mind. This is where Zeus lives. Not in a palace of stone, not locked behind golden gates, but in the infinity above us. The sky itself was his throne. That is why the ancients called him Skyfather. To the people of ancient Greece, Zeus was not only a god who ruled with authority. He was the vastness above the open space that gave them air to breathe, rain for fields, light for days. He was the boundless sky, steady and eternal. Think of it this way. Every human being lives beneath the same sky, whether in Athens, in Egypt's deserts, or on distant islands. The sky was always there. It united everyone. It still does. That is why Zeus was seen as the father of gods and men. Not because he looked down like a stern parent, but because he represented something larger. The sky does not belong to one person. It belongs to all. Imagine lying in a field on a quiet evening thousands of years ago. The stars emerge, one by one, flickering like distant fires. The Milky Way cuts across the darkness, a river of light. In that moment, you feel small but not insignificant. You feel connected. That connection is Zeus, the eternal Skyfather, watching not with eyes, but with presence. A presence that wraps around you every time you lift your gaze upward. The ancients prayed to him not because they thought he lived in a cloud palace, but because he was the sky, omnipresent, inescapable, everywhere. And what is eternity if not the sky itself? Mountains rise and crumble, cities are built and forgotten. But the sky remains. It was there before us. It will be there after us. That is the eternity of Zeus. When thunder roared, they said it was his voice. When rain blessed the earth, they said it was his gift. When the sun blazed high, they said it was his crown of light. Zeus was not separate from nature. He was nature told through story. But what about now? In our time, we know the sky scientifically. We speak of atmosphere, gravity, weather, galaxies, black holes. Yet even now, science does not erase the feeling. Look up at a clear night sky, and logic falls silent. Something deeper takes over. That wonder, that awe, that sense of infinity, it is the same force the ancients called Zeus. The Skyfather beyond time is not bound by temples or rituals. He exists every time you breathe, marvel, or feel part of something vast. And perhaps this is why the idea of Zeus never faded. Because it was never about statues or sacrifices. It was about the eternal presence of the sky. The reminder that above all struggles and fleeting concerns, there is always something greater. Close your eyes and imagine. A shepherd in Greece, a sailor on the Aegean, a child in Athens, all of them looking upward. They see the same stars you see tonight. They feel the same vastness. And across thousands of years, that sky has never changed. Zeus is eternal because the sky is eternal. And we too are eternal, whenever we remember that connection. So the next time you pause beneath the open heavens, think of this. You are standing under the same dome that inspired poets, guided explorers, comforted dreamers. You are breathing the air of the Skyfather. You are part of his eternity. This is Zeus beyond myth, beyond story, beyond time itself. The eternal Skyfather, written not in words, but in the endless sky above. Close your eyes and imagine a great hall, not built of stone or wood, but formed of light, echo, and memory. It is not a place you can touch, yet it feels familiar. This is the Hall of Stories, the place where myths gather. At the center sits Zeus, not as a solitary ruler, but as the voice of the sky. Around him are others: Athena, goddess of wisdom; Apollo, god of light and music; Hera, guardian of marriage and devotion; Poseidon, the restless sea; Artemis, the moonlit huntress. Each one a presence, each one a force. This is the Council of Myths. And like a council, they are not in agreement. They speak, they challenge, they inspire. Through their conversations, humanity found its own reflection. Athena leans forward, her voice calm, steady, filled with conviction. She represents the mind, the brilliance of thought, the courage of strategy. Through her, people learn that wisdom is not passive. It is active, sharp, and necessary. Apollo speaks next, his tone warm and golden. He is the musician, the poet, the healer. He reminds mortals that life is not only survival, it is art, beauty, harmony. Without song, the heart forgets how to dream. Then Hera rises, her presence firm, steady as stone. She reminds the council of devotion, of loyalty, of bonds that hold people together. Without care and commitment, even gods would drift apart. Poseidon's voice is like the crashing of waves, unpredictable, untamed, restless. He argues that life is motion, risk, adventure. The sea cannot be controlled, and neither can destiny. Sometimes it is the storm that teaches resilience. And Artemis, silent, graceful, watchful, reminds all that freedom is sacred. She is the wilderness, the independence of spirit, the untamed moonlight guiding wanderers. Now, imagine these voices blending together, not as enemies, but as a chorus. Each god representing a value, a truth, a piece of human nature. This was the gift of myth. Not one voice, but many. And what of Zeus? He listens. He does not silence them. For the sky holds all things, storm and calm, light and shadow, wisdom and chaos. The council reflects the fullness of life itself. In this way, the Council of Myths was never really about gods. It was about us. Each story was a mirror, showing humanity its many faces. In Athena, we saw our intellect. In Apollo, our creativity. In Hera, our devotion. In Poseidon, our restlessness. In Artemis, our longing for freedom. And in Zeus, our search for order and meaning above it all. The council teaches us something essential. Life is not lived through a single truth. It is lived in balance. Wisdom alone cannot sustain us. Art alone cannot sustain us. Devotion alone cannot sustain us. We need all of them together. A council within our own hearts. This is why myths endure. Because they are not rigid commands, but conversations. They invite us to listen, to question, to imagine. They remind us that even the divine is not one voice, but many woven into harmony. Think of your own life. Do you hear the counsel inside you? The voice of Athena, urging wisdom? The voice of Apollo, calling you to create? The voice of Hera, reminding you to stay loyal to those you love? The voice of Poseidon, daring you to take risks? The voice of Artemis, guiding you to freedom? And above them, the voice of Zeus, the vast sky that holds all of these within. When the ancients told these stories, they were not simply entertaining. They were building an inner council, a compass to guide human life. They gave names to our inner struggles and aspirations. They turned invisible truths into visible stories. And so the Council of Myths lives on, not in temples, not only in books, but in us. Every choice we make, every dream we follow, every conflict we face, these are the echoes of the council. We are never truly alone, because the voices of myth are always speaking. If we listen, they guide us. So, remember, when you feel torn between reason and desire, duty and freedom, safety and adventure, pause. You are not divided. You are a council, and in the sky above, Zeus still listens. He is not a king commanding obedience, but a sky father holding all voices in balance. The Council of Myths is eternal. It is the great dialogue of humanity. And through it, Zeus remains not just a god of thunder, but the keeper of harmony. There is a sound that has always unsettled humanity. It comes without warning, without pattern, without mercy. The roar of thunder. For thousands of years, people looked upward with awe and trembling when the sky split with sound. They wondered, who speaks from above? Who shakes the heavens so violently that even mountains seem small? To the Greeks, there was only one answer, Zeus. The thunder was not chaos. It was his voice, a reminder that the sky was alive, awake, and watching. But here is the deeper truth. Thunder was never meant to be fear alone. It was meant to be power, yes, but also presence. A signal that something greater exists beyond human reach. When a storm rolled over the Aegean Sea, sailors huddled in their ships. They prayed not only for safety, but for strength. Because to them, Zeus was not simply punishing, he was calling. He was reminding them that life itself was vast and unpredictable. Think of how thunder feels even today. It rattles your windows. It shakes the ground. It turns the familiar world into something unfamiliar. And for a brief moment, you are reminded of scale. We, the small, the sky, the great. This is why the Greeks associated thunder with the will of Zeus. Because only a god of eternity could speak in a voice so large. Yet not all thunder was anger. Sometimes it was guidance. A burst of energy to awaken those too comfortable, too certain, too silent. Imagine standing on a hillside, thousands of years ago, as black clouds roll in. The air thickens. The world grows dark. Then the first strike lightning flashes across the sky, and thunder follows, booming like the heartbeat of the heavens. In that moment, fear mixes with wonder. And out of that mixture comes reverence. The ancients bowed not just to avoid wrath, but to acknowledge mystery. For Zeus was not only a storm god, he was the voice within the storm, the sky itself, speaking in sound. But what do we hear in thunder today? We explain it with science. Lightning heats the air expands, the shockwave echoes. Yes, that is true. But even knowing this, the experience remains. When thunder rolls, it does not feel mechanical. It feels alive. That is why Zeus still lingers in the sound. Because thunder is one of the last voices we cannot control. We may silence machines, cancel noise, command instruments, but not the sky. The sky speaks on its own terms. For the Greeks, thunder was not only about fear. It was about connection. It reminded them they were part of something vast. It reminded them that the heavens were not empty, but filled with spirit. And perhaps, deep down, we feel the same. When thunder shakes us, we are forced to pause. We stop our tasks, we lift our heads, we listen. For a brief moment, the sky demands our attention. In myth, Zeus hurled thunderbolts. But in truth, the thunderbolt was not a weapon, it was a symbol of presence, of authority, of the living bond between humanity and the cosmos. When the thunder roared, people remembered their place in the world. Small, yes, but not forgotten. For the same voice that could shake mountains could also bless fields with rain. The same clouds that rolled with darkness could break open to reveal sunlight. Thunder, then, was never the end. It was the beginning of something. A reminder that storms pass, that calm returns, that balance is always restored. And so the ancients learned to hear thunder without fear, not as destruction, but as dialogue, not as a threat, but as a call to remember the vastness of life, the eternity of the sky, and the presence of Zeus above. Even now, when thunder rumbles outside your window, you can hear it the same way. Not as danger, but as voice. Not as punishment, but as reminder that we are small, yes, but we are part of something infinite. The thunder without fear. The eternal voice of Zeus. When the Greeks looked to the sky, They did not only see storms, they also saw rain, the gift that made life possible. Zeus was not only the voice of thunder, he was the bringer of rain, the nourisher of fields, the unseen hand that filled rivers and made harvests bloom. Imagine standing in an olive grove long ago. The ground is dry, cracked by weeks of Sunday. The leaves hang dusty, the air heavy with thirst. Farmers wait, watching the horizon with prayers. Then, clouds gather. The first drops fall. The soil darkens, drinking the water like a miracle. Gratitude rises in their hearts. The sky has answered. Zeus has remembered them. To us, rain may seem ordinary. We measure it in forecasts and percentages. But to the ancients, rain was life itself. Without it, crops withered, animals starved, people faded. With it, the world was renewed. And so Zeus was not only feared, he was cherished. He held the power of life in his hands. When the rains came on time, it was blessing. When they failed, it was imbalance. Prayers rose from temples. Sacrifices were made in hope, not cruelty. Because life's rhythm was bound to the sky, there is something deeply human in this. We know what it means to wait for relief, to wait for hardship to end, for blessings to arrive. Rain became more than water, it became hope fulfilled. Even today, rain feels different from other weather. Snow is silent. Wind is restlessness. But rain is renewal. It touches everything. It cleanses, restores, awakens. Think of the sound of rain on rooftops, on leaves. It is rhythm, steady and patient, like a heartbeat spread across the world. No wonder the ancients thought it divine. Zeus was not only god of power, he was god of provision, the father who fed the earth, who gave freely so all might live. The gift of rain carried a lesson. Not all blessings are in our control. You may till, plant, care for fields, but you cannot summon rain. It comes when it comes. In that waiting, humility is born. The Greeks knew this well. Their myths spoke of rain that nourished and healed. Zeus was eternal not only because he ruled, but because he gave. His eternity was not only in strength, it was in generosity. Whenever rain fell, it was more than weather. It was dialogue. The sky, alive, listening, responding. Rain was the gentle side of Zeus, the fatherly hand stretched to bless the earth. We feel this still today. When summer finally breaks into rain, relief fills us. Windows open, faces tilt upward. For a moment, gratitude fills the air. Perhaps that is why rain inspires poetry and prayer. It touches deeper than skin. It reaches the soul. It reminds us, life is always renewed. So when you hear rain at your window, think of the ancients. Think of their prayers rising skyward. They saw rain not as chance, but as gift. The gift of Zeus, the eternal provider, giving life drop by drop. To the Greeks, Zeus was not only the god of storms, he was the guardian of balance, the keeper of justice. His power stretched beyond the skies. It reached into the lives of mortals. He watched over oaths and promises. He guarded the bonds of hospitality. Imagine a traveler, weary and hungry, arriving at a door. In Greece, welcoming the traveler was sacred. Food, water, rest given freely. Why? Because every guest stood under Zeus's protection. This sacred duty was called time's Xenia asterisk. Zeus was its eternal guardian. To fail in kindness was not just rude, it was to dishonor the king of gods himself. Every meeting of strangers carried divine weight. Every meal, every handshake was part of balance. But justice meant more than kindness. It meant truth. It meant respect for order. It meant knowing no one stood above eternal law. Stories told of rulers too proud or greedy. And though Zeus was not quick to act, his justice was certain. It came like a storm, sudden, fierce, undeniable. Yet justice was not only fear, it was balance. It reminded the Greeks that life was not chaos. Wrongs would not last forever. Truth would outlive lies. So when they spoke of Zeus, they spoke of fairness, of oaths kept, of wrongs made right. Zeus was not only above the clouds, he was in daily life, in the courtroom, at the family table, present in promises and trust. Perhaps this is why his presence felt eternal, because justice is timeless. It lives across ages. When a wrong is righted, we feel something larger. The Greeks called that larger force Zeus. But true justice is not vengeance. It is not cruelty for cruelty. It is balance restored, the healing of what was broken. Zeus's justice was not a hammer. It was a scale that weighed gods and mortals alike, a scale that whispered, eternity bends toward balance. Imagine living under this belief. To cheat a neighbor was to defy Zeus. To welcome a stranger was to honor him. Justice was not abstract. It was lived in choices, acts, words. This is why Zeus endured as guardian of justice. Because the Greeks knew lies crumble, empires fall, but truth holds firm. Fairness endure. Balance is eternal. And perhaps, even now, we feel the same. When injustice is corrected, our spirits lift. When truth is revealed, the world feels right again. That relief, that balance restored was the awe of Zeus, the god of thunder, the bringer of rain, the eternal guardian of justice. For the Greeks, words were never just words. They carried weight, meaning, and consequence. A promise was more than sounds. It was a bond, and that bond was sealed by the gods. None guarded it more than Zeus. He was times Zeus Horkios, times keeper of oaths. To speak falsely was to invite ruin. To betray a vow was to break the world's balance. Truth was not just a virtue. It was cosmic law. Imagine a small gathering. Long ago, two men prepare to make an agreement. One places his hand on the altar. He swears by Zeus and speaks his promise. The crowd listens in silence. Everyone knows this vow is eternal. It is guarded by the King of Gods himself. Oaths tied mortal lives to divine order. Breaking them was not just dishonor. It was disorder, a tear in the fabric of balance. Zeus did not only hurl thunderbolts. He sat in the silence where promises were spoken. He bound words with invisible thread. Think of the power of this belief. When people swore an oath, they stood taller, they spoke clearer. They knew their words were alive. Alive with the presence of Zeus. Even kings were not exempt, perhaps especially kings. A ruler might command armies or gold, but a false vow cast him under Zeus's shadow, and that shadow was heavy. It reminded all that even the mighty must honor truth. Oaths gave shape to society. They built trust where fear could have ruled. They created bonds beyond power or wealth. An oath was not just agreement. It was covenant. Zeus was always the witness, the unseen third presence in every vow, the voice that whispered, "Truth endures, lies fall." This is why oaths carried such weight. A lie was not forgotten. It was remembered by the gods. It lingered against eternity. And even today, we feel this truth. Promises still carry power. Trust can build worlds. Betrayal can shatter them. Our lives are ruled by words. For words shape bonds. Bonds shape trust. And trust shapes the world. The Greeks gave Zeus their oaths. They placed him at the center of promises, knowing eternity itself was listening. But the oath was not only fear. It was accountability. It reminded mortals that choices mattered, that each word could ripple beyond the moment. Zeus Horkios was not just punisher of lies. He was the guardian of trust, the divine reminder that life is woven from words. Promises are the threads. Truth is the fabric. So when you hear, asterisk, I give you my word, asterisk, think of the Greeks. Think of the silence around the altar, the weight of the vow, the eyes lifted to the heavens. For to them, words were eternal, and Zeus, eternal watcher, listened. In ancient Greece, life revolved around the hearth. It was more than fire. It was warmth, food, safety, and the glow that held families together. The hearth was the center of home. Yet even here, Zeus could be felt. The hearth belonged to Hestia, goddess of fire. But Zeus too was its guardian. Because the fire of home also bound community. The home was never apart from the divine, and Zeus watched over every flame that united mortals. Imagine stepping into a Greek home. The air smells of bread on hot stone. Children laugh nearby. At the center, the hearth glows steady. It is tended carefully, never left to die. To let the fire go out was dishonor. The hearth was continuity. Its embers lit new homes. It gave families belonging, as if Zeus guarded the flame. The hearth was also trust. When a guest entered, they were led to it. They were offered food and warmth. Hospitality was sacred, watched by Zeus Xenios. Thus, the hearth symbolized society itself. Every meal, every shared flame, was divine order. Zeus's presence here was quiet, yet strong. Not thunder, not lightning, but the reminder that bonds begin at home. For what is justice without kindness? What is order without belonging? The world outside was wild and uncertain, but at the hearth, there was balance, there was trust, there was eternity flickering in flame. Some cities kept a sacred hearth burning always. Guardians tended the eternal fire. Travelers carried embers to their homes. Each spark linked them to the divine. The hearth marked beginnings, offerings for children, blessings for new ventures. It was both witness and protector, and in every spark, Zeus was present, not as master of flame that was Hestia's, but as guardian of promises spoken beside it, protector of bonds formed in its glow. This was different from the thunderstorm. There, Zeus was vast and untouchable. Here, he was close, present in laughter, in meals, in warmth shared between kin and guest. This is what made him eternal. Not only power above, but presence within. Not only law and thunder, but quiet guardian of home. And maybe this is why he endures. For every table we gather around, every fire we light, every meal we share, they echo ancient rituals. We may not call it Zeus, but we feel the same truth. That home is sacred. That warmth is eternal. That trust and belonging are powerful as storms. The Greeks honored Zeus not only in temples, but in kitchens, in homes, in welcome. They wove eternity into the simplest flame. So do not see only the thunderbolt. See the hearth fire. See the glow that gathers people in. See the presence watching over bonds and vows. For Zeus was eternal not only in the sky, he was eternal in the flame that never died. To the Greeks, the world was never silent. The rustle of leaves, the crack of thunder, the flight of birds all carried meaning. And at the heart of these signs stood Zeus. He was not only god of storm and sky, he was a god of voices. Voices through nature, omens, prophets, and oracles. The most sacred voice was at Dodona. There, beneath a great oak, Zeus could be heard. Pilgrims arrived from far away, feet dusty, eyes filled with hope. They carried questions of war, harvest, love, and destiny. At Dodona, they waited. They listened to the oak leaves in the wind. The sound was soft, like 1,000 voices. The priests and priestesses, the Seloi, gave meaning. They believed Zeus's breath moved through the branches. The oak was sacred. Its roots drank from earth. Its crown reached heaven, a bridge between mortal and divine. Here, Zeus did not roar with thunder. He spoke with leaves. Gentle, subtle, eternal. Dodona drew kings and commoners alike. Rulers asked before battles. Farmers asked before planting. People asked about love, travel, and trust. The answers were never commands. They came as hints and symbols. The Greeks knew the future was unclear, but they believed Zeus's voice gave balance. This belief taught patience and humility. To hear the gods, one had to be quiet. Sit beneath the oak. Listen to the wind. Trust wisdom flowing through silence. Zeus's oracle was not only about the future. He reminded mortals they were part of rhythm. That human plans were woven into divine design. Eternity had its own pattern. This shaped Greek life. Every decision held divine weight. Every choice tied to whispers of gods. Mortals walked reverently, never alone. At Dodona, people carved questions on lead tablets. Some survive today, fragile but clear. Shall I journey across the sea? Will my harvest thrive? Should I trust my neighbor? Simple question. Human question. But asked with faith, the sky listened. Zeus endured as oracle, not for easy answers, but for reflection. His whispers reminded mortals wisdom is not loud. Sometimes wisdom is a rustle. Sometimes it is silence that teaches. Even now, beneath trees, when wind stirs branches, we feel it. A memory of voices beyond our own. The world still speaks, if we listen. For the Greeks, that voice was Zeus, the eternal guide, the whisper in the oak, the oracle who never shouted, but always spoke. When people thought of Zeus, they thought of lightning and sky. But beyond thunder, another image lingered. The image of balance, the image of justice. Zeus was not only ruler of storms, he was keeper of law and guardian of fairness, the eternal reminder that order must stand above chaos. The Greeks knew the world could slip into disorder. Greed could replace generosity. Pride could overshadow humility. Power could crush the weak. But Zeus restored the scales. One of his sacred roles was protector of oaths. Breaking a vow offended Zeus himself. In Greece, oaths bound people together. A man's word stood between trust and betrayal. Zeus was witness to every vow. Picture a small Greek village. Neighbors clasp hands, swearing peace over land. Elders lift their voices to the heavens. They call on Zeus to bless the promise. If the oath is broken, justice follows, because Zeus guards every word. This belief gave strength to agreements. It gave weight to words. Behind every promise stood Zeus, unseen but present. Zeus also watched over strangers and wanderers. Hospitality times, Xenia times, was sacred. Every traveler could be a god in disguise. Mistreating a guest risked angering Zeus. Justice lived beyond laws and battles. It lived in kindness, in the bread offered, in the door opened to a traveler. Zeus reminded mortals that respect held the world together. But justice was not always gentle. Sometimes it struck like thunder, reminding mortals of their limits. Stories told of kings grown too proud, believing themselves greater than gods. Arrogance was always corrected, not with cruelty, but with clarity, showing mortals the danger of imbalance. Justice was never punishment for its own sake. It was harmony. It was balance. It kept the world from tilting into selfishness or pride. It reminded mortals that choices carried weight. Greek imagination was shaped by this belief. Every oath beneath the sky was sacred. Every guest welcomed was divine. Every act of fairness echoed Zeus's order. Justice was not only in temples, it lived in hearts. It guided trade, rule, and neighborly life. Zeus's justice was eternal, not perfect. It taught the universe was built on balance. Law came not only from men, but from the heavens. When Greeks looked at the sky, they saw more than cloud. They saw scales always in motion, and Zeus watching, ensuring they never broke. Justice was not distant. It lived in soil, promises, and doors opened to strangers. In the silence after thunder, mortals felt its weight. For Zeus was balance, the eternal guardian, the god holding order against chaos, the one who kept the world together. In the Greek world, life was never random. Every birth, every choice, every ending belonged to a vast design. At the heart of that design stood the Fates. The Fates Clotho, Lachesis, Atropos were three sisters. They spun, measured, and cut the threads of mortal life. Even the gods could not fully escape their weaving. And yet above this endless weaving stood Zeus. He was both bound by fate and master of it, a paradox that made him eternal. Some stories said Zeus obeyed the fates. Others whispered he could bend their threads. He shifted destiny when the balance demanded it. This made Zeus both humble and awe-inspiring. Imagine a mortal asking, "Am I free to choose? Or is my path already woven?" The Greeks lived with this same question. Zeus was their answer. He represented choice within limits, a path guided yet open. Destiny was not a cage, but a river. The river flowed to the sea. Mortals steered their boats along its bends. Clotho spun the thread of life. Lachesis measured its length. Atropos cut it, bringing the end. Above them, Zeus held sky in balance. For mortals, this gave comfort. Struggles were not without meaning. Every joy and sorrow was part of a fabric. Zeus guarded that fabric from unraveling. Kings rose and fell. Heroes triumphed and stumbled. Yet the threads always returned to fate's loom, and Zeus ensured harmony in their weaving. This shaped how Greeks saw life. Destiny could not be avoided, but it could be honored. To live with courage, to act with integrity, to respect the will of Zeus. That was the way to meet fate with dignity. Zeus was not only thunder's wielder, he was time's witness. Companion of the fates, keeper of the loom. To honor Zeus was to honor existence. Life was fragile, yet eternal. Even in limitation, there was freedom. The lesson was clear. We cannot control the length of our days, but we can shape how they are lived. We cannot choose when the thread is cut, but we can choose how brightly it shines. Zeus reminded mortals of this truth. Eternity was not about endless life. It was about meaning within the design. When thunder rolled across mountains, Greeks felt it. The sky was vast, the earth small, and yet each thread mattered. Each life was woven into eternity. Each moment belonged to Zeus's design. When the Greeks spoke of Zeus, they spoke of more than a god. They spoke of a presence that reached beyond temples and into the world. Zeus was storm and sky, but he was more. Protector of oaths, guardian of guests, balance of justice, whisper in the oak, keeper of fate. Each story revealed not just a god, but a truth about life. To live under Zeus was to live under order. Chaos could be held back by law, arrogance humbled by balance, kindness made sacred. Zeus was not only above mortals, he was within their choices. When a farmer shared bread, Zeus was there. When a king swore an oath, Zeus was there. When families prayed for rain, Zeus was there. When thunder rolled across mountains, eternity was remembered. This eternal quality made Zeus more than myth. He was not only in stories, he was in nature. He was in justice. He was in the unseen order of life. To honor Zeus was to honor the universe itself. Yet the eternal Zeus was not distant. He was near, present in whispers of leaves, present in silence of stars, present in justice within human hearts. In Zeus, the Greeks saw power and humility. Power to command storms, humility to speak softly through omens, power to guard fate, humility to remind mortals their choices mattered. That is why his memory endures. Not because we fear thunder, but because we search for meaning, because we crave balance, because we ask if life is guided by something greater. The eternal Zeus is more than Olympus. He is human longing for order in chaos, guidance in uncertainty, connection to the divine. When we listen to wind in trees, we are not far from the Greeks. When we feel awe under sky, we are not far from Zeus. Eternity is not only in gods, it is in memory. It is in stories passed from voice to voice. It is in lessons echoing through centuries. Zeus was eternal because truths he carried were eternal. Words matter. Kindness matters. Balance sustains life. When thunder fades, the lesson remains. Eternity is not distant. It is here. In each choice, in each act of justice, in each breath, beneath the endless sky. The Greeks called it Zeus. We may call it something else, but the eternal remains. Always present, always guiding, always speaking.